Hello, MCU fans! Today we're going to take a look at the question of whether or not the MCU will be rebooted after Secret Wars. And if it is rebooted, will it be a hard reboot or a soft reboot? I actually did a video on this over 2 years ago and haven't talked about it much, but I get asked all the time. So there'll be lots to discuss. Let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a January contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. Okay, so to start off, we need to define the difference between a hard reboot and a soft reboot. And they both go back, of course, to computers. So, hard reboot, that's an action in which the power to the computer is physically turned off and back on again, causing an initial boot of the machine, also known as a cold reboot. So the key is, any of the work you were doing at the time is gone. You're totally shutting down the machine and starting all over. Versus a soft reboot, that's an action in which the computer is restarted without shutting it all the way down and turning the power off. It's also known as a warm reboot. So basically, you can keep doing what you're doing. Things continue on while the reboot goes on in the background. So that's why we're going to look at this question, hard reboot or soft reboot. To do that, I want to look at some examples in the comics of a hard reboot and a soft reboot. So we're going to start with the hard reboot. To me, the most famous one is 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths that DC Comics did. Basically, after 50 years, they decided it's time to start over. The continuity was a little confusing at this point, and that was a turnoff for new fans. So along comes Crisis on Infinite Earths. So we got some crazy things that happened, right? Supergirl dies. Flash dies. I mean, it was insanity. But what's interesting is, because this was going to be a hard reboot, before it started, the comics for the characters that were going to appear in the series had a hard ending point. Notice Action Comics. After 500 some issues, it's being started over. And Wonder Woman, her final issue. Crazy, right? And indeed, we did see things start over, right? Now, Batman kept its numbering, issue 404, but started over with year one. Total reboot. Superman, on the other hand, started over with a brand new issue number 1. And in fact, we learn he was never Superboy. Total reset of his character. A Wonder Woman was reset. Justice League was reset, which, by the way, that was a fantastic run of Justice League, and I do believe Gunn is heavily using that for his new DCU, which is really cool. But anyway, everything started over. So it was kind of a bummer, right? Because World's Finest, for example, all 323 issues really didn't have any connection to the new DC, the new rebooted DC, because Superman and Batman had never met in the rebooted universe. And Legion of Superheroes, awesome comic by the way, but it was really thrown for a loop. Their team founded because of Superboy. In fact, Superboy joined the team, but now Superboy never existed. So they figured out a way to make it work, convoluted as you might assume, but still, a hard reboot, that's what happens to the old continuity. It's just gone. All right, so now let's talk about a soft reboot. And the most famous one to me is Marvel's 2015 Secret Wars. But before we get to that, we need to talk about 1984's Secret Wars. So it was a massive crossover, but it really kind of crept up on you. Because if you were reading the comics, like Amazing Spider-Man 251 and Marvel Team Up 140, it was normal. You know, Spider-Man's fighting Hobgoblin and he's hanging out with Black Widow, right? But at the end of each of the comics, the characters encountered this crazy machine, which we ultimately find out was created by the Beyonder. Notice Spider-Man saying, "What is it?" We were all wondering, what is it? But of course, curiosity got the better of Spider-Man, and he heads into it, and then we learn to be continued in Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars #1. Now, if you were the type of person that's like, oh, this is some stupid cash grab, I'm not going to waste my time and read that comic. Instead, you picked up the very next issue, and Spider-Man 252, what? He's got a black costume. What just happened there, right? And Fantastic Four, the Thing is gone, and now it's She-Hulk joining the team? What is going on? So if you weren't already going to read Secret Wars, you definitely were now. All right, so let's talk about it. It was a 12-issue miniseries where the Beyonder basically pitted a bunch of heroes against a bunch of villains. And, okay, we can all see through this, right? It was just to sell toys. We know that, right? But honestly, it turned into something more. Because, again, Spider-Man, we had to learn how did he get this suit? And it was a big deal, because at the same time he got the suit in the miniseries, in his regular comic, we see this thing was bad news, right? It was tearing him apart. In fact, this is the issue where the Fantastic Four help separate the symbiote from Spider-Man. He ends up in his whitey-tighties. Dude, whitey-tighties, really? Then Johnny Storm gives him a disguise so he can keep his identity secret, and thus we have the bombastic Bagman, who of course showed up everywhere, including across the Spider-Verse. Too funny. But all right, so in the main MCU, here's what I think will happen. Remember that little goop that was left behind in No Way Home? I think Marvel's going to plan on finally giving Spider-Man his black suit, either during Spider-Man 4 or certainly during Doomsday and Secret Wars. That will be awesome. Of course, I can't figure out if Venom the Last Dance actually retconned this goop, or maybe if Tom Hardy's Venom will actually show up in Spider-Man 4. Many, many possibilities, but he's going to get this suit during Secret Wars, for sure. All right, so then the series wrapped up with, well, who else? Doctor Doom taking over the power of the Beyonder and basically defeating everyone, well, except for Molecule Man. Molecule Man became very important in finally taking Doom down, and we're going to see Molecule Man was also important in 2015's Secret Wars as well. All right, so fantastic series, loved it. So something else we need to talk about before we get to 2015 Secret Wars is that in the early 2000s, Marvel created the Ultimate line of comics. So notice Spider-Man #1. That's because this was actually a brand new universe. Not the 616 in the comics, it is now 1610. And every single character in it was starting from scratch. You were at ground zero with all of their histories. So we had Spider-Man, we also had the Avengers getting issue #1, Fantastic Four, and that's also where we got Miles Morales. So fans really enjoyed it because, it was starting over. You were right at the very beginning with all of these characters. What was interesting, though, is it almost started to create a competition between the Ultimate line and the regular line, so between 1610 and 616. So Marvel had to decide, what do we do about this? Because we love both. How do we handle these two almost competing universes? Well, we do another limited series. So along comes Time Runs Out, which dealt with incursions across all of the multiverse, but in particular, by the end, we got down to 1610 and 616 being the only ones left. Now, we have seen incursions happening in the MCU, so I think Marvel is definitely patterning themselves after 2015's Secret Wars. In fact, we've even seen the Doctor Strange and his freaky-deaky third eye may have been the cause of some of them, maybe the cause of most of them. We'll have to see. I cannot wait for this storyline to continue on so we know what on earth is going on with him. But I do think that Time Runs Out storyline of incursions happening is going to be adapted whenever we do see Doctor Strange and Clea again. All right, so finally we do get to 2015's Secret Wars. And notice from these two covers, there's a lot of fighting going on. But the fighting isn't between the heroes and the villains, it's between the two different universes. In fact, they had these really clever little character sheets showing you what was going on, right? And notice on the left, we have Earth 616, and on the right, Earth 1610. And I will say, this is why some fans are upset with Feige for calling the MCU's universe 616, because the comics already have a 616. Of course, they want it to be 1999-99, right? Well, Feige's justification, whether it's good or not, is that the MCU is the live-action adaptation of the comics. So in Feige's mind, there is no chance for the MCU and the comics to cross over. Thus, he can reuse 616. But anyway, it's just interesting. But notice we have, as an example, the Spider-Man. We have the Spider-Man from 616, the one we've known for years at this point, and then we have Miles Morales, who's been around for a little over a decade. But the important thing I want to point out here is the naming conventions. Notice it's planet-universe. So Earth-616, Earth-1610. Well, lo and behold, Marvel is now starting to use that same naming system. Because when Deadpool visited the MCU, Earth 616. And when he goes back to his universe, Earth 10005. Even the TVA referred to it as Earth 10005. So yeah, I definitely think we're going to start to see these different Earths being labeled and starting to, collide with each other and create these problems. And it's important to note, this is different than how the TVA labeled the branches coming off of 616. Notice they numbered them 616 dot blah, 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 dot blah, 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 blah. So just interesting to note. And we see in What If that Captain Carter was trying to move to this naming system. Notice Xandar-625. I actually think that was a little confusing because this happens to be a branch in Loki's tree, but still, I appreciate that Marvel is trying its best to move to this naming scheme. Even in the What If game, which personally I don't think is canon, but nonetheless, they tried to move to this naming scheme. Because notice New York, Timeline 724, we even see Titan, Siberia, Nowhere, all trying to use the naming system. Although, technically, it should have been Nowhere-657. So, Marvel has had some inconsistency in things. We've seen that, but I really do think they're trying to move to this Earth dash and then universe naming. So let's look at the key universes as we head towards Secret Wars. Obviously, 616, 838, the two Spider Man universes, and Venom's universe. Fantastic Four will be introduced this summer. We have Wherever Monica Went at the end of the Marvels, and of course, the Deadpool universe. So some of these do have official names they've been giving us. Earth 616, Earth 838. We know Venom's is Earth 688. And of course, Deadpool and Wolverine are on Earth 10005. Now, the other universes do have numbers that fans have provided, but to reduce confusion, I don't want to include those yet until Marvel officially uses those. So anyway, we're going to start seeing Earth 616 colliding with 838, etc. I love it. It's very similar to what we saw in the comics. And for the record, I think these two are the same universes. We'll find out, but I don't think Marvel really wants two different X-Men universes hanging out there. So I think we're going to get a big reveal that indeed those are the same. We'll see. So I do think Reed Richards may be the key to finally understanding how the multiverse is configured, because I do think Loki's tree is separate from those other universes like 838 and is also separate from the new Fantastic Four universe. And in fact, in the potato quality trailer, he says, this equation not only confirms alternate dimensions, it suggests that parallel Earths exist on different dimensional planes. And I think that's the key. Different dimensional planes. So different from Loki's tree. And that's why they're going to start colliding. So I cannot wait for this movie to come out and hopefully help us understand what is going on, right? All right, so back to the 2015 Secret Wars comic, we see that Doctor Doom has now become God Emperor Doom by stealing, once again, the power of the Beyonders, just like he did in 1984's Secret Wars comics, and Doctor Doom creates Battleworld. So this is a really cool visual where they were showing us all the components of Battleworld. I want to talk about this one in particular. We'll zoom in a little bit, and we can see that we have Manhattan from Earth 616 and Manhattan from Earth 1610. So now Peter Parker and Miles Morales are together on Battleworld. They used to be in two separate universes that were going to cause incursions with each other, and now they've been thrown into Battleworld. So Deadpool and Wolverine certainly seem to hint that the Void will become Battleworld, because we saw this comic here, which if we zoom in, it's Secret Wars, and of course, it's the issue of Secret Wars where Doctor Doom created Battleworld. So I think all the heroes and probably several villains will be thrown into the Void, and that will become Battleworld. But unfortunately, one thing we're never going to know is whether or not this Kang from Quantumania was going to ultimately become the Beyonder and be the reason Battleworld was created. Marvel's moved away from Kang. You can leave in the comments what you think about that. But either way, it's happened. So instead, we now have Doctor Doom. In a way, I'm glad we have Doctor Doom, because obviously he was the big bad from both Secret Wars runs. But I do hope they find a way to close down the Kang storyline. There's a lot of dangling threads there. The Kang Council, what happens to them? I mean, maybe Doctor Doom steals their powers, and that's how he becomes all-powerful. So be interesting to see what Marvel does with that. Now, I do think opposing Doctor Doom will be the Council of Reeds, because in the comics, these were Reed Richards from, all across the multiverse coming together to try to figure out what to do to solve these different problems. And hey, we definitely have enough Reed Richards out there to form a very nice council. I mean, we could even throw in the one from 1994's never released Fantastic Four movie, and we would have a very good Council of Reeds. I think that's going to end up happening. But I do also think that Doctor Doom ultimately is going to steal Loki's powers. Of course, Loki's sitting on the throne in his tree, the 616 tree. If Doctor Doom were to knock him off that throne, Doctor Doom would now be in control of the entire tree and could recreate it into whatever he wanted it to look like. So yeah, I am worried for Loki. I am worried. All right, so back in the comics, some crazy things went down, not the least of which, one of the main reasons Doctor Doom is defeated is because Black Panther wields the Infinity Gauntlet and hangs out with Namor in the process. Crazy, right? But I think Marvel's got some crazy moments ahead for us in Secret Wars as well. I mean, Nick Cage has got to come back, right? Got to come back. Please, please. And I do think we are going to get the OG actors playing in their X-Men characters with comic-accurate costumes. Oh, love it, love it, love it. But in the end, in the comics, and this might be the most important thing that I want to share, is we now have one universe. Every other universe is gone. We have one main universe. But the key is, it took the characters from 616 and 1610 and just simply placed them in that universe together. But Miles Morales still had all of his history, all of his memories, and Peter Parker had all of his. So it's not like they said, oh, we're going to rewrite everything and it's like you've always known each other. No. Instead, it's almost like you took all your toys and you put them on one universe, but you kept all of their original histories. That is so important. Because if we look at the Phase 6 possible slate, I say possible because we really don't know what 2026 or 2027 is going to look like for the most part. But if we look at this slate, which, by the way, is Ironheart the beginning of Phase 6 or the end of Phase 5? I don't know. Anyway, let me know that in the comments. But if you look at it, it kind of looks like all these stories slowly move towards Secret Wars. So maybe you could have a hard reboot and just start all over, right? But if we look at what we know about Phase 7, because there are 5 dates that Marvel has announced, well, we've also heard rumblings of everything from Blade, if it doesn't happen in Phase 6, Midnight Suns, a Scarlet Witch movie, Black Panther 3, Shang-Chi 2, Thor 5, a World War Hulk movie, Hawkeye Season 2, obviously Spider-Man 5, and probably 6. We got to have more Tom Holland, and we know we're going to get another Fantastic Four movie. Well, that tells me that all of these characters are still going to maintain their original histories, or how could you have some of these movies? I mean, I guess that they could reboot all of them, but there's almost no point then. You would just start over. So I think that Marvel is going to use the same strategy that the comics used, where they didn't erase everybody's history. They just simply put them all now in one universe, and they have to figure out how to get along. And of course, we're going to have the X-Men thrown in there too, because we know that Phase 7 is going to be a huge X-Men phase, the mutant saga, right? So going to be very, very interesting. And keep in mind, most of these teams here, if not all of them, are still going to be around. I don't think they're going to reset any of these. Now, we may not see as much of the Guardians or the Eternals, for example, but I think all of these are going to be around. Young Avengers may get renamed champions, but they've just built up too many storylines with these characters for them to just reset everything and start over. Instead, I think it's going to be a soft reboot, similar to 2015's Secret Wars. But what do we do about the big three? I mean, we've got to have an Iron Man, a Black Widow, and a Captain America, right? And they're all either dead or really, really, really old. Well, so I think the solution is going to be variants, because we've seen so many variants, right? We saw variants in Loki series. We saw them in Endgame. Obviously, No Way Home had the Spider-Man variants. Multiverse of Madness gave us Doctor Strange variants, as well as the Illuminati, some of which were variants, obviously. And even What If? What If gave us the Guardians of the Multiverse, and then ultimately the Exiles. They're all variants. And hey, there's even paint. We could have paint variants. No, I don't want to paint Iron Man. Well, maybe I do. That would be interesting. No, I don't want, no more paint. But the point is, all of these universes exist out there and could have characters that could be pulled in to our new, reformed universe after Secret Wars. So, it's not going to be easy to recast these characters. We love all 3 of these actors, but it is so unlikely any of them are going to come back to redo their characters. Instead, we're going to get new actors, and they're going to be pulled from one of those existing universes we talked about. The trickiest one, though, oh man, recasting Black Panther. So I actually respect Marvel for not recasting and for doing Wakanda Forever exactly how they did it. But now it's time, and I'm hearing rumblings that it's finally going to happen. So we may get a variant who replaces Black Panther, or maybe they age up his son. I don't like that idea, though. I don't think they should do that. And I'm going to throw out what I think would be the coolest place to pull a Black Panther variant. Remember in 838, that mystery 7th chair that no one filled? Now, Mordo said our final member, and in comes Professor X. But was it really the final member, or is there somebody else? Wouldn't it be cool if 838 had a Black Panther who's probably not real happy with 616, and he's the one that ends up being our recast Black Panther who ends up being the Black Panther going forward? That would be really cool. But the key is, any of these universes could give us a new Black Panther. And the X-Men. The X-Men are also interesting. We know we're going to get the OG actors back for at least one more run. But wouldn't it be cool if McAvoy and maybe Fassbender, some of the others, if they were willing to come back? I'd be fine with that. They're young enough that they could do this easily for 10 or 15 more years, and they were fantastic in their roles. Now, some of them obviously won't be coming back. Nicholas Hoult is now Lex Luthor. Jennifer Lawrence did not enjoy the costume and all the makeup. So some of them won't come back. But Evan Peters as Quicksilver? Oh, my word. That'd be incredible. So let me know your thoughts on that. I mean, I could definitely see some of the first-class X-Men coming back. Or we get total new characters, total recasts. I could see that happening as well. Now, I will admit there are some disadvantages to the soft reboot that I think Marvel is going to give us. And one of them is we don't have some of the classic histories of the characters. Because if Captain America came from one universe and Wolverine from another, then we don't have their shared history of fighting together decades ago. I mean, that's a bummer. I could live without it and move on, but that's just something to keep in mind. And for example, Tom Holland and Joseph Quinn, their Spider Man and Human Torch, are not going to have met and had this long history of knowing each other since they were teenagers. Instead, they're going to meet for the first time during Doomsday or Secret Wars. I'm okay with that. We can't have everything. We have to let go of some things. And I think some of these shared histories, we're not going to get them. And then you've even got situations like Magneto. I don't know how they're going to be able to give us an actor who is old enough to have realistically been involved during the concentration camps in World War II. So we may just have to give up on that fact and accept that, things are just going to be different in this new universe. So let me know your thoughts on whether those things would bother you, but those don't really bother me. All right, so I'm going to throw out one more kind of crazy idea, but is it possible that your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is even more important than we ever would have imagined? Is this a way that Marvel brings in some of the Spider-Man characters that don't currently exist in the MCU? For example, Norman Osborn, Dr. Octopus, Chameleon, etc. If these characters were to appear in Secret Wars, obviously in live action, maybe they stick around, and that's how we get them into the MCU. So I got this idea when I saw the poster for the King Thanos amusement park ride, because look who's swinging into battle. Yep, none other than your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And in fact, Captain Carter's there and the Hydra Stomper. So I'm wondering if maybe the way they're handling the amusement park ride is a hint towards what we could see in Secret Wars. If some of these animated characters may be showing up in live action. That would be so cool. All right, so there you go. That's how I think Secret Wars is going to go down. It's going to be a soft reboot. But I want to know what you think. Do you think it'll be a soft reboot or a hard reboot? How do you think they'll recast characters that are going to be really tricky, like Iron Man, like Black Panther? Where do you think the X-Men are going to come from? I would love all your thoughts. You know I read and respond to all of them. So don't forget, we have the January contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. And there's the membership option in case you're interested in that. And I always love to mention the Discord. Here we are in the Metaphysics chat talking about, well, how this reboot might go down. So I will leave a pinned comment in case you want to join. 1,900 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and we would love for you to be part of them. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we will all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.